Today on Oklahoma Gardening, host Casey Hentges begins our new season with projects to begin your gardening season. First, Casey shows how to collect a soil sample. Then we check those seeds that we saved in the fridge last year to see if they're still good for this year. Casey is out in the garden to construct some new raised beds, one out of repurposed furniture. And for the other, she unlocks the secrets of keyhole gardening. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Nursery, Pulse's source for great gardens, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
Over the years, I've met with a lot of gardeners, and I find that gardeners tend to fall into two different categories. There's the plant collectors and your garden designers. Now, if you're like me and maybe a plant collector, or some might call me a plant hoarder, you go to the nursery and you see a unique and interesting plant and you have to have it. You might not even have the right environmental conditions in your yard, and you might not even have more space for another plant, but you go ahead and buy it because you have to get it. Now, you also have gardeners that really respect the design aspect of their landscape, and they will maybe have a purple and yellow perennial garden, and they go to a nursery and they have a little bit more willpower than I do. Say they see a white flower and it looks great and is interesting, but they know that they shouldn't buy it because it doesn't fit in with their design. Now, as gardeners, we always focus on the plants. And while that's the fun and exciting thing to talk about, anytime you're building something new, you have to have a strong foundation. And in a garden, that foundation is our soil. So today we're going to focus on how to take a soil sample, and as we go through the season we're going to focus on even more aspects about the soil. In order to do a soil test, you're going to need a couple of things. We have here a soil probe, and you can check one of these out at your OSU County Extension office. It's a great instrument to be able to pull cores in order for us to sample our soil. If you don't have one, you can check one of these out at your local county extension office. Another instrument you might need is just a plain old screwdriver, because a lot of times our soil will get stuck in here and it's nice to be able to push that out. If you don't have a soil probe, you can use a hand trowel. This one's nice because it actually has the measurements on here. You're going to want to take a full 6 inches of that soil profile every time you take a core sample. The other thing we have here are our soil bags, and this is what we're going to actually send our sample in, and a marker in order to mark this stuff. Now, for most homeowners, you're just going to want a routine sample, and that'll give you your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and also your pH of your soil. This sample will cost about $10, but it's really worth it because the OSU Stillwater Lab is calibrated for Oklahoma soils. Now, we also have a soil bucket. It's just a plain old bucket that's been cleaned out so that we can add our core samples in here and get that mixture to put into our soil bag. Once you have all of your equipment, you also want to think about where you're going to sample. A lot of times people ask how much of a space I can sample, and it's really not defined on how large. What you want to think about is how the gardens have been maintained. Here we're going to actually sample our vegetable garden, which has been maintained that way, so we've added fertilizer for our vegetables. We're also going to be sampling the outside of the vegetable garden, which has not been maintained. It has not had any compost or fertilizer added to it, but this summer we're looking at adding a new garden, so we want to make sure that we know what type of nutrients we're dealing with before we install those plants. Another area that we're going to sample is our turf. The lawn is typically maintained differently than the flower garden or the vegetable garden, and so we are going to sample that separately also. Late winter, early spring is a great time to test your soil because it's been laying dormant. We haven't added any compost or fertilizer to our vegetable garden here, and so we'll be able to get an accurate reading of what nutrients are available to those plants that we will soon be installing into our vegetable garden. Here we're going to sample, like I said, our vegetable garden, and you want to make sure to move out any irrigation lines so you don't puncture them. Also move away any mulch because you just want the soil. We're going to push this into the ground pretty deep in order to get a good 6 inches of the soil profile. This will give us the reading for the amount of nutrients that are right there in the root zone for the plants to grow. We're going to add this to our soil bucket. You're going to repeat this process 15 times because it's been identified that 15 core samples will give you the most accurate reading on your test results. When you're collecting your soil cores, you want to make sure that you're taking 15 samples from random areas in the garden that you're testing. Once you have this, you want to make sure to remove any sort of debris that might have gotten in there because you're simply wanting to test the soil. We're going to mix this up and break it all up. And once this is mixed up pretty good, we're then going to fill our soil bag that we have. Now, if you don't have one of these soil bags, you can use some sort of container or baggie, but once you get it to the extension office, you want to make sure that the soil, and only the soil, gets transferred into one of these bags. You also want to make sure that you're filling up your bag completely full so that you're giving them plenty of soil for their analysis. So you can see here we have a full bag, and we're simply going to tie that off and then mark on here that we want a routine sample. Now, when you take this into the extension office, they're going to put some barcodes on here that will identify who this belongs to, and you'll get your results in about 7 to 10 days. So now we have our soil sample for our vegetable garden, and we're going to repeat this process outside of the vegetable garden as we plan a new garden out there, and then also in the turf area, which has been maintained differently also. I would encourage you all to take advantage of these nice warm days and get out and sample your garden as well to ensure that you're building the best foundation for a successful garden this year. And also, as you get your results, you'll be able to follow along with us as we discuss all the intricacies of soil. In January and February, you want to start thinking about what seeds you're going to start in your garden. Now, if you're like me, you've probably gone to the nursery and you wanted to buy a bell pepper seed pack and a jalapeno seed pack, and you probably didn't plant all those seeds. So if you have leftover seeds, you want to have stored those in a dry, cool location, such as a refrigerator, as we've done here. And you probably are not sure whether these seeds will germinate next year or not. So what we're going to do is test these seeds. Now, oftentimes you'll find there is a date on the seed packs, such as this is December 31st of 2015. But this seed pack has no date on it. So we're not sure if this is from last year or some previous years. And what you want to do to check the germination is simply get some paper towels. We're going to wet these paper towels here and just wring those out a little bit. Kind of open them back up here. So now that you have your wet paper towels, you're going to simply place 10 seeds down the middle of this. There's 9, need one more, 10 seeds. And simply just fold this over. Make sure you've got good contact with the wet paper towel and the seeds. Fold those up so they stay nice and wet. And you want to make sure that you write either on your baggie or on a label. If you do it on a label, it's kind of nice because then you can use this label when you plan up your seeds later on. We want to make sure that we write what kind of plant we are growing. In this case, we are testing summer squash, and the date is January 20th of 16. We're going to put this in our plastic baggie with our label, and you want to make sure to seal that up tightly and press out some of the air. So for this situation, in this test, we're going to let this set for about a week. You can often look at your seed packet and it'll give you an idea of how long it'll take to germinate. For these squash, it says it recommends 4 to 10 days, but you might want to check those periodically. And it doesn't hurt to check it daily. You just want to make sure that you seal it every time so that we maintain the moisture in there. We did this about a week ago. So we're going to check our seeds and see which ones have germinated. So here you can see we have 10 seeds, and it looks like 1, 2, 3 seeds have germinated. So if we figure 3 out of the 10 seeds have germinated, we can assume that if we planted this seed packet, we would have about a 30% germination rate. Now this is kind of low, so in this situation, it would be best to go ahead and buy new squash seeds. If you did want to plant these, it would be best to go ahead and plant these up, because you can see here that there is a root already beginning to grow. So you would just gently poke a hole in the soil and put this in there and very gingerly put soil around it. Now there is another test that you can do also, and that's called the water test. So here we have, again, some more squash seeds that we want to test. We put about 20 in here, and we're just going to fill this up with water. So you might just tap them to make sure any air bubbles that are on the outside of the seeds come off. And we're going to let this set for about 15 minutes and come back and check them. So now we've let these set for about 15 minutes. And if you look, of the 20 seeds, there's 5 that have sunk to the bottom. And what this tells us is that 5 seeds are still potentially viable. It's the ones that sink that we feel will potentially germinate. The ones that are floating, the seed coat has broken, and so air has permeated into that seed and potentially dried out the embryo. So the ones that are floating are the bad seeds, the ones that sink are the good seeds. Now this test is a little bit quicker than the paper towel test. However, it doesn't really give you as accurate of a result. In this particular situation, we had 5 seeds that sunk, so 5 divided by a total of 20 seeds gives us about a 25% germination rate. The reason why this test is not quite as accurate is because we are not actually germinating any seeds. We are just looking at the physical condition of those seeds. Now in this paper towel test, we have actually germinated 3 of the 10 seeds, and so this has given us the result 30% germination rate. So these are both low germination rates, which means we need to probably go buy new seeds if we want to grow squash plants this year. And I always like a good excuse to go buy new seeds, and I probably will pick up a few extra also. As gardeners, we're often looking at items and seeing how we can use them in a different way than they're actually intended. And we're here at Habitat for Humanity in Stillwater, and we found a couple of different items that we think will work perfect for the garden. We've got some solid wood drawers here, and they're actually only $1 a piece, so we're really excited about this find. There's a lot of different shapes to them. The one thing you want to look at when you are buying drawers or any wood to go out into the garden is to make sure that it is solid wood. You can hear by the sound that it is solid, and also by seeing the grains of the wood. Here's a piece of particle board, and this is what you want to avoid, is particle wood, because this will actually expand in the weather and the elements outside. There's a lot of different ones with character. Some have handles, some don't, so there's a clean front to these. What we're going to do is simply paint these to preserve them a little bit better, and then drill a few holes in them to allow that water to drain out and fill it with soil, and you have a raised bed. Now the other thing we found here that we're excited about is this dresser. It was only $8. It's got some doors on the front that we're going to have to pull those off. But these shelves will actually become dividers in the raised bed. Again, we'll paint this, we'll lay it on its side, drill some holes in the bottom of it, fill it with soil, and it's going to make a perfect raised bed for us. So we have a nice selection of drawers here that we're going to use for raised beds, and probably one of the biggest decisions you have to make is what color of paint you're going to choose. We chose purple and yellow here, a little bit of a plum color and kind of a canary yellow. Purple and yellow are great complementary colors, and we're excited about this combination. It'll add a lot of color into the garden. Now we've put our second coat on, and it does have a primer included in the paint, which is nice because you got a good thick cover on it to kind of finish off any of that wood that might have that waxy finish to it. Now after we've got our second coat done, what we're going to do is drill holes in the bottom of these. You want to make sure that you have plenty of drainage out of these raised beds. So we've already started this process, and we're just going to finish this one drawer. So we've got our drawers and our dresser arranged now. We put our largest piece right here in the center as a focal point, and then flanked it with our drawers on either side. And what we've done is we've staggered our drawers. This allows us to give a little bit more height to the display with some bricks. We put these old landscape bricks underneath here, and that supports this. But we wanted to give it a little more stability, so we used some landscape glue underneath these. And so not only will the weight of the soil in the plant help hold this, but also that'll just provide a little bit more security. So the next thing we need to do is just fill this with soil. So what we've done here is we've filled our drawers with a combination of finished compost, some fine pine bark, and this helps with drainage, and then just some plain potting soil. So we've mixed all that up in here, and we've got a really nice media to grow in, one that will drain really well, and we've just got to do this a few more times and we'll be ready to plant this garden. Today we're going to build a keyhole garden, and this is a garden concept that was brought to Africa where they didn't have the greatest soil in some countries, and they were kind of limited on the supplies that they had to build a garden. Now the idea of a keyhole garden is utilizing different materials, and you can see the overall shape is that keyhole shape. The idea is basically we've layered a lot of organic matter here, and then we have our central compost pile in the middle. Now as this all breaks down, it will shrink a little bit, but we'll continue to add compost to this center island, and that's why we have this entrance here so we can access it. Now ours is a little bit shorter than what a lot of keyhole gardens are, and that's simply because we wanted to be able to have kids access it and see the compost. Now the metal basket that we used had some sharp edges, so we bent those down and then simply split a hose and put that over there to protect your arms when you're reaching in there to deposit some organic matter. As this compost breaks down, it will leach into the surrounding raised beds and provide nutrients to these plants as they grow, and it'll continue to improve this soil in this raised bed. Now we gathered a lot of different supplies to make this. Ours is made out of stone here, but a lot of times you'll see in Africa that they're made out of trees and logs around the edges, and some are made out of bricks. So really the great thing about keyhole gardening is it allows you to utilize a lot of the materials that you have available to you. So in order to build a keyhole garden, there's a few things that you're going to need to gather. First of all, we've got some stone here, and this will help make our exterior wall. And then we're going to need a lot of organic compost matter. And now is a great time to collect a lot of this stuff as you're beginning to clean out your garden. So we have some old straw bales here. We have some shredded paper, some lawn clippings. If you have a fescue lawn during the wintertime, you can go ahead and use this. Or if you happen to build one in the summertime, you might have a few more lawn clippings. Some kitchen scraps. You want to make sure that you don't use any oils or fats or anything with meat product in it. Basically just your fruits, your lettuce, things like that. Tea bags, coffee grounds are also great. We have some leaves that we've cleaned up out of the garden. We also have some ornamental grasses that we've cut back, branches, and we also have some animal bedding down here that'll add a nice amount of nitrogen to our compost. You also want to gather some old cardboard, and as you can see we have some new boxes here and some that's been sitting in the barn for quite a while. Eventually it's all going to look like this, so it doesn't matter what condition that cardboard's in. Now there's a few tools that you're going to need to gather. Something to cut with, so a box knife is great for cutting that cardboard up into different size pieces. You're going to want a tape measure so that you can measure the distance, the radius of your keyhole garden, and then some twine and some marking paint to mark the perimeter of your garden. The keyhole garden got its name after the old-fashioned keyhole shape. So here on the ground we're going to want to create about a 6-foot circle. And we don't have a compass quite that large, so we've made one basically out of 2 sticks and some twine. What we've got is a stick here that will act as our center fulcrum. Then we have some twine that we've measured 3 feet distance from that center compost pile. Now, the reason why you want it to be 3 feet is basically that will be the adequate distance that can leach into the soil and provide nutrients to your plant that will be out here on the outside of the bed. So what we're going to do is just simply use this and go around, keeping it tight. Now that you have hopefully a circle and not an oval, we're going to go ahead and remove our makeshift compass. And you're going to want to find an old cage or something. Now in Africa they would have woven a basket for their compost cage that'll go in the center of it. But in the spirit of recycling and using things that you already have around the house, we've got this old tomato cage that we're going to use, and we're going to set that in the center right there. It does have stakes on it, so it's nice to go ahead and anchor that down. If yours doesn't have spikes at the end of it, then maybe use some old rocks or something just to secure that in the center. Now the cage we're using here is about 15 inches in diameter. This is a little bit on the small side, but if you wanted to do a larger cage, a lot of times they are anywhere from 2 to 3 feet in diameter, and this one is also about 3 feet tall. You might want to get one that's about 4 feet tall in order to just have a larger keyhole garden. Now if you are going to have a larger compost center, then the important thing to remember is to come off 3 feet off of that center. So again, your diameter of your entire keyhole garden would be much larger also. So in Africa, a lot of times they're working with bare soil. As you can see here, we're doing this in a Bermuda lawn area. And you can dig this space out a little bit to remove that Bermuda, but we're going to try something a little bit here, and we're just going to simply layer our organic matter on top of that, almost as if you were doing lasagna composting, and see if we can prevent that Bermuda grass from coming up through the garden. So now we're going to start building our exterior wall. We've got this old stone that we're going to use, but you can really use any old material if you have brick or even some logs. In Africa, they'll use heavy logs to create that circumference. But we're going to use this stone here. And basically what we're going to do is just start outlining our circle that we've created. And we'll just keep repeating this all the way around. Make a complete circle because we want to create this access area to our compost bin that'll be in the center. Now we've created the entrance here on the north side, which is really the ideal place to put it because you don't want to sacrifice any of that southern and western exposure to the sunlight for your plants to grow. So here we've located our access on the north side. The other thing you might notice is that there is some shade casted on the garden right now. So depending on what time of the year you're building your garden, you want to be aware of what that sun exposure will be like in the summertime. We are building this in the winter time, and so we're getting a lot of shade that won't be there during the summertime. This will be a great spot for our keyhole garden, and our next step is going to be to add another layer of rock to get some more height. Next week we're going to fill our keyhole garden with organic matter and soil and get it ready for planting.
Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, we finish up our keyhole garden and get it ready for planting. Casey diagnoses a problem with young seedlings. We cut back and divide ornamental grasses and evaluate and clean up winter damage in our trees. It's a brand new year for Oklahoma Gardening, so join us again next week for more TV you'll grow to love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society.